Do the Dallas Cowboys have a backup quarterback battle going on right now in training camp? All that and more in this episode of Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. Follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. He's actually on location in Oxnard, California, covering the Dallas Cowboys training camp. Landon, how you doing today, sir?
Doing well. Nice to get a little break. Obviously, there's no practice today, so we're gonna take a little break, but we'll be back at it tomorrow. So it's now time to kind of relax, like kind of go over the videos I've taken, try to do some deep dive on what we've seen, and kind of ingest all of it, because when you're there, it's like a fire hose is hitting you. We've talked about it before. So it's nice to kind of take a second and try to let it absorb and then kind of sort through your thoughts after a while.
And this is a good reminder that we recorded a post-practice podcast. That's a lot of piece. Yesterday, it's on YouTube. It's in the live section. It's also in your podcast feed, so make sure you go check it out. Today, we're going to dive through some of Landon's notes from practice, including a potential quarterback battle for the Cowboys. Later, let's dive into it. How do you think my guy Will Grier has looked so far in camp?
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about Cooper Rush potentially taking Dak's job.
No.
No, it's funny. I was having a conversation with somebody in the stands the other day, and I thought that Grier had a really great training camp last year too. Just really showed us a lot of different stuff. It was pretty clear that Cooper Rush was the second best quarterback by the end of the training camp, but that doesn't mean that Will Grier had a bad camp, and that I think that as far as third string quarterbacks that the Cowboys have had in camp before, I have to ask, like, is this the best QB room the Cowboys have had top to bottom since the Romo, Kellen Moore, Dak Prescott room? Because it does really feel like you go out there, you see Grier, even though he's working with the third team. He executes the play as they're supposed to. That's kind of the bare minimum. But what you also see him doing is creating, for the pocket, making a big play, throwing down the field, using his feet to open up lanes and then throw the football. There's something to Will Grier that I think that is kind of, I guess, worth developing, worth holding on to, and seeing if you can kind of stabilize his floor or raise his floor a little bit, and then you might have a little bit something in a kind of a savvy, slightly athletic, kind of mobile backup, right? But it's been interesting to watch him operate out here and throw the football. I felt like when you go into your third team, in previous seasons, it starts to look really, really ugly.
It's a disaster, right? You're just hoping you can complete practice.
And these last 2 years, it has not been that. All those guys are all getting really great reps because Grier is able to get in there and execute at a high level.
Do they even have a fourth quarterback on the roster right now?
It's funny because that's funny you mentioned that, because they were with the rosters that they hand out, like physically on the day of at camp, included Garrett Gilbert, who I'm pretty sure got cut several months ago. So I don't think they have a fourth quarterback. I haven't seen one out here.
Yeah, there's really no.
The rosters are quite unreliable as I've just shown, but no, I don't think that I've seen a fourth quarterback out here.
So to answer your question, I think the best quarterback room they've had recently was probably 2020. That's the one they had Dak and Andy Dalton, and I think.
Oh, that's true. That's a good one as well.
But this is probably the best third quarterback they've had in a long time, right? And what I'm curious to see, because last year, you're right, Will Grier had a really good training camp, but he did not perform particularly well in the preseason. And I get it's the preseason; it doesn't matter all that much. Practices matter more than the preseason does. But I do think you want to see it translate. Like, you want to see him have good practices and then have it translate to the preseason. And maybe that would give the Cowboys some thoughts of, hey, Maybe if something were to happen to Dak long term, like he's going to miss 6 or 8 games, that's when we go with Will Grier. But if it's in-game stuff and we just need to get through a quarter, maybe it's Cooper Rush. All that to say, I'm just really excited to watch Will Grier play in the preseason. That's all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's just a fun guy to talk about, and he's a fun player to watch. And we're probably not going to talk about him a ton. So I just thought it was worth mentioning here that he's had a really good camp. He had a really good camp, I thought, last year. It'd be nice to see him parlay it into something.
And it's not uncommon to see some of these day 2 and day 3 quarterbacks take a while to kind of hit their ceiling. I think a perfect example is like Case Keenum, who bounced around the league a bunch, was with the Texans, failed there. I mean, was with Cleveland, I think, multiple times. And then he took the Minnesota Vikings to the NFC Championship game. I'm not saying that's going to happen with Will Grier, but I won't be surprised if are we going into year 5, year 6 from now, if all of a sudden this is the best football that he's ever played.
How different is his career than Nick Foles? Like in a sense that like he's a guy that came in kind of unheralded, was an incredible high school player, and had a good college career. Sometimes some guys just take a little bit longer than others. And that's not saying that Will Grier is going to develop into a starting quarterback or a quarterback who wins the Super Bowl or anything. No. But I think that there is just like in other positions, there are guys that kind of take a little bit longer to develop and can kind of raise their floor to a point where their immense upside finally is worth it to put on the field.
I would also mention with the new rule changes this year where you can have 3 quarterbacks active every single week, it makes even more sense to carry somebody like Will Grier, assuming that you deem him, good enough to make the roster. It seems like so far that's where we're at. I have to ask about Cooper Rush just really quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, I know this is a new system, but he's been with his team for a long time working under Dak. How do you think he's looked so far?
I think he's looked great. I mean, he had a couple of really good throws in practice the other day. He's moving around a little bit. I think he even had a running touchdown.
I did see that. I saw the rushing touchdown right up the middle.
And again, it was a situation where the blitz had come and had been taken care of, and everything was basically behind him, and everything was everything in front of him was covered. So it was like he had no choice at that point. I think that's the kind of situations you want to see Cooper Rush running the football, is where he has no choice. But yeah, I think he's moved around well. He's operated the offense well. It's not like you've been out here seeing him missing throws. He's run the offense like he's Cooper Rush running the Cowboys offense. Exactly. It doesn't seem like he's noticed much change, to be honest.
The quarterback position is just one of the ones that I feel even better about now than I did at this time last year, because Cooper Rush has way more experience, way more big game experience, right? Playing a Monday Night Football game on the road against the Giants and playing well. It just feels like the floor, even if you happen to need your backup quarterback, is just so much higher than it's been, at least in recent years.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, Cooper Rush was an absolute unknown when he came in 2 years ago. And then suddenly now you've kind of seen him come in multiple times at this point and felt like, that he's able to not only operate, but at times thrive. In the offense. So I think it's at least gotten to the point where you're not feeling like you're kind of having to keep an eye on the backup quarterback market. You feel really, really comfortable with the guy you got. You feel like you maybe have one of the best backup quarterback situations in the league.
The reason I know that is because we haven't got a single question this offseason. Like, hey, should the Cowboys look at trying to sign this guy or trade for this guy? Seems like everybody feels pretty good about where the Cowboys stand with their backup quarterbacks. Lynn, I want to talk about some more under the radar players that we just haven't covered yet during practice next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets. That is up to $200. That's right. All you have to do is bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That is $200 that you can spend on betting from anything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run, all in an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. What's better than that? I know I use FanDuel all the time when it comes to the NFL, making NFL futures bets, betting on games. It's absolutely fantastic. And there is no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Every dayers. We're not going to do a show after, or there's no practice today. So only one show today. Tomorrow, we're going to answer your Twitter questions. So make sure you guys tune in for that. Landon, let's talk about some under the radar players from practice that you see as soon as you unmute your mic. Who stood out to you that we just haven't talked about yet?
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much. It's funny because I wrote all my notes last night as I was kind of going through everything and rewatching video. I woke up this morning, kind of re-looking at my notes, scanning Twitter, and I starting to see that other people are starting to pick up on some of. I think other folks have going through their video right from practice and starting to see. And one of the names I saw pop up this morning for the first time that I had commented that I can't believe hadn't gotten a little bit more looks. And really, to be credited, John Owning was the guy who kept on pointing this out to me, was that Oso Odighizuwa is having a very nice camp so far.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked about him or pointed it out. And I don't know that he qualifies as flying under the radar. He's your starting 3 technique. But I do think that what I've seen from him is that every time I've seen him take a rep, he's flashed. He's shown you something. He's getting through the line quickly. He's being disruptive in the run and in the pass game. They've been using him in a lot of different ways too. I saw a really interesting formation where they had him and DeMarcus Lawrence as the defensive ends, and that is it on the defensive line. And Micah Parsons playing like a linebacker spinner role where he kind of at the snap looped around one side, and then they did like this kind of crazy pirate stunt. But anyways, Odighizuwa was able to beat Tyron Smith by himself and kind of get around and cause some disruption. I just think that, we're very focused on Mozzie Smith. Obviously, the pass rushers on the outside are the headliners for this team in a lot of ways. And it's really easy to kind of overlook a guy that has been, at one point when he came in, the only reliable defensive tackle on this team at true defensive tackle.
At 281 pounds, right?
Yeah, and what he's developed now into is a guy that, I think he's on the verge of a Pro Bowl type season. It seems like, just based on where he was last year and the step he may, it appears he may be taking. I think he's probably ready to be in that conversation a little bit more. And there's a lot of grade 3 techniques, so maybe that's not quite there. But I do think that he is ready to take at least a significant step from where he was last year.
Yeah, as we are the number 1 fans of Oso Odighizuwa, so that would be great for our brand if that happens. Yeah. But not surprised. It's really hard to watch the interior defensive line like an 11-on-11s when you're on the sideline view, and it's just because there's a lot of stuff happening in there. So I think that can get lost. And I know a lot of people, as they're watching practice, like to focus on the ball and where the ball is going. But I'm glad to hear that Osa's having a great camp. I want to talk about somebody on the other side of the ball. Awesome Richards, the Cowboys day 3 tackle guard prospect. I know that you were a little impressed by what you saw yesterday.
Yeah, he was one of the guys that, when I went back and rewatched, and, I unfortunately kind of have been prioritizing a little bit more the first and second team kind of reps as far as videoing them and then coming back. But I did notice that of the third team reps that I had gotten on there, it just, you notice Awesome Richards. He moves incredibly well. He just has a really great athleticism to him. He has some pretty good power. It doesn't look perfect yet, and he is playing guard. I think for I don't know how much guard he's played in his career so far. I don't think it was much at North Carolina. So I think that I think that from what we've seen is a guy that looks comfortable getting to the second level, looks comfortable sealing guys off. I saw several different plays where he was able to execute a reach block, get around and completely seal off and turn and end up blocking 2 or 3 guys on a nice run play. He just recovers well. He looks for work well. He has great awareness. There's definitely multiple times when it feels like they're trying to execute stunts or twists on his side, and he's able to push a guy inside and then see a free runner looping around and make the adjustment and get his hands on it. And again, is the technique perfect? It's not teaching tape. Absolutely not. But the fact that he is doing this and many of offensive line coaches will tell you it doesn't always have to look perfect as long as you're getting the job done. And then we'll work on making it look better or is making it feel more and more comfortable for you. I think that's where Richards is right now, is that he's doing it despite imperfect technique. which, you know, to me shows that once you kind of improve that technique, he's going to get even better. I think he's, you know, right now he's taking reps with the third team. I think it's time to start giving him, you know, reps with the second team and maybe even throwing him with some first team reps just to see what you've got in this guy. Because, you know, comparing him to TJ Bass or some of these other folks that we've seen at guard, I would say he's every bit as good as those guys. It's time for him to at least get the kind of competition that those guys are getting the chance to see.
I'm assuming you just think he's a guard in the NFL. Like he's just not going to play tackle.
I don't know. I mean, his athleticism is such that I could see him play tackle. What I'm not 100% sure on, just because we haven't seen enough pad practices yet, is where his strength level is at. Because one thing
that was kind of the knock on him, right?
Yeah, one thing I've seen, he's able to move bodies and like he's able to block folks, and that's not so much a problem. But where there are issues, I think, is sustaining blocks, you know, keeping on blocks. It feels like there were times he was falling off of them. So, and mostly on the second level, mostly when he's trying to take on a linebacker and he's got somebody that's like, you know, even more athletic than he is. That's where he's struggled. I think he stops his feet. And so that may just be a technique thing. I'm not sure, but there are some questions to still be answered about his strength and how functional it is. Once he kind of gets to the, you know, second and first team reps.
Now, I want to ask you about another offensive lineman, and we didn't even talk about this pre-show, but Matt Willetsko. I saw some of the videos that you've cut up. What have you seen from him in practice?
It's been very up and down, you know, but I mean, I also think that Willetsko's having a pretty serious, you know, throw it to the fire moment. You know, I mean,
they're making him play guard, right?
No, he's playing a ton of tackle.
Oh, is he? Okay, good.
I haven't seen him play much guard, but I mean, he's playing tackle against Parsons. He's playing tackle against.
That's a rough assignment.
It's a rough assignment, you know. I mean, especially with Steele and Tyron Smith basically not working into a lot of the kind of team practice stuff. They basically have Willetsko and Chuma Edoga as playing the starting tackle. So they've had very tough assignments, and it's been very up and down. But I think, you know, that's good for Willetsko. He needs to see those kind of guys, and you have to remember, you know, he got hurt during training camp last year, so he didn't get a ton of reps last year. So this is a pretty serious, you know, step up a level of competition that he's faced in pads in quite a long time. So
he is one of the guys, like, I would love to see Mike McCarthy and the coaching staff saying, you're playing right tackle this entire preseason game. Like, just get ready. You're going to play the entire game, because I think he needs the reps. And it probably will help not to play Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, but I just want to see it like an extended amount of snaps so they can get it on tape. They can go back and break it down, and we'll see the next week how much better he gets.
Yeah, and I do anticipate he's going to be a guy who will play a ton in these preseason games. And honestly, like I we've talked about how he got some OTA reps at guard, but I have not seen really any reps at guard from what I've seen. So
they've got more. They've got more options at guard with. I mean, obviously Zach Martin's not there right now, but Chuma Edoga, Matt Farniak, TJ Bass, who you mentioned, Awesome Richards, like they have
basically playing only guard at this point.
Right. They've got options. If Matt Willetsko makes it in the NFL, it's not going to be as a guard.
No,
like he's going to have to be a tackle. So I want to see him play there. Last name before we move on, Peyton Hendershot. He got a lot of run in the red zone. What were your thoughts there?
I think he's going to get a lot of run in the red zone. I think that's what my takeaway was, is that it seemed that they were specifically targeting him, running plays to get him looks specifically. And he clearly is that's I think where his skill set lies, right? As a big guy target who can, if he needs to elevate above the rim, can get the ball. He just is good at blocking out other defenders and catching the football when there's tight coverage. I just feel like that's really going to be where he is going to have a lot of success and a lot of looks, because that's, you know, he has that kind of skill set in a way that, you know, maybe Ferguson doesn't quite, and we'll see when Schooner gets back, because I think, you know, he's a big target too. So I imagine he would get some red zone looks as well. But I think right now they're kind of targeting Hendershot is sort of, you know, what you saw him do is kind of in a detached slot situation, and then kind of running like not quite an option route, but like a stop route or something, and Dak just putting the ball right on him. So
he's got good ball skills. Even his touchdown against Jacksonville last year was like a kind of a fade to the back of the end zone. He made a great play on a back shoulder to catch it. I think that's his strength, is playing the ball in the air. All right, so I agree with you. I would not be surprised at all to see the Cowboys look for him a lot when they get inside the 10, 5-yard line. I want to talk about some X and O stuff that you saw at practice next. So, Landon, one of the big takeaways that you had from the last 2 practices is that the Cowboys are using a lot of motion. Can you explain what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's the big difference to me is, this team has used motion obviously previously, and I have even famously charted training camp motion and shifts before. But it feels like the difference is that they are still continuing to use motion, but it seems to be more purposeful. More kind of motioning guys across the formation, and then using the slight advantage of the motion action of that gives creates just a bit of leverage on the defender who's trying to follow you, and then at the snap having that guy go out in route and using that just extra step to get the ball to them quickly and get upfield, or motioning a guy to kind of move a defender out of the way and then running to that side of the field. It feels like at times previously, and it's not that this was never done with the Cowboys before, but it feels like previously they were doing a lot of motion simply to kind of help identify coverages, right? Like simply to just
man or zone, right?
Man or zone, and whether the motion guy may or may not have anything to do with the play. But now it seems like they're using it in creative ways. They're motioning smaller guys across the formation and snapping the ball behind the line of scrimmage, so you lose someone like
Turpin,
as he's going across the formation. And even if you don't give him the ball, it's that moment of panic that the linebacker's eyes have to have when you see suddenly you lost Turpin as he's going across the formation. When he pops out to the side, does he have the ball? Who has the ball? And so stuff like that. You're seeing a little bit more orbital motion stuff, with Turpin, coming across the formation and then rotating back around the shotgun quarterback and going back the other direction. We saw that in conjunction with the kind of a speed option thing, but we've also seen it in other kind of pass play stuff. And then the other thing that I think that is really even is a much stronger development as far as moving towards something that we weren't before. There seems to be a lot more bunch formations and a lot more kind of condensed formations, and then at the snap, spreading out from those condensed formations, and that's very much a Shanahan type thing. You see that a lot in those kind of offenses where they get a 3-by-1 set or something, and you've got all 3 guys bunched right off the tackle. And then it just creates a lot of natural rubs, a lot of routes.
Free releases.
Yep, free releases. Opportunities for last-second motion, like we just said, to get guys to kind of just change the shape of the defense right at the snap, so to really kind of test the defense's communication. So these are all things that are part of the offense, have been in the offense. These formations exist in the offense, right? They have always.
It's just using more of them.
Using it more, right? It's just about using it more and understanding the principles behind why those things are good, and then exploiting it more. So that's really where we're going to see the differences in this offense. I think is, again, not so much a wide change in the playbook, but just exploring different parts of the playbook for maybe different reasons than we were presented before with Kellen Moore.
Last question before we head out. We've been talking about this West Coast offense, or Tex Coast offense, as you trademarked it, right? I think CeeDee Lamb's a fantastic fit because he gets open all the time and he's great after the catch. Brandon Cooks is great after the catch. We've talked about this on the last couple of shows. I want to know about Michael Gallup. How do you think he's kind of transitioning into this offense?
Well, you're starting to see him kind of line up a little bit all over. He's seen a little bit more in the slot. Obviously, he's part of these condensed formations. From what I've seen so far, it's a lot of similar stuff with Gallup, to be honest, as far as where his catches are going, right? Like up the sideline, contested stuff, above the rim. Yeah, like in a lot of ways, he is that like kind of vertical in the sense that he gets up, and especially above the rim. So I do think that you've seen them kind of deploy these guys in ways that is familiar to them, but I think you've also seen some changes in how they're doing it. But for Gallup, it seems like it's still a lot of getting him back to where he was previously, right? And trying to establish that part of his game as they work through the rest of it. I mean, it's for all these guys, it's a lot of slants, crossers, getting guys running to a spot. Interesting. I mean, they run some interesting angle routes. Like CD ran a route yesterday that was like almost like an inverse Texas route, right? Where instead of going out and then in, he ran in and then straight out. And it wasn't a corner route because he didn't go like in and then up and then out. He went in and out like immediately. So I do think that they're trying to find different routes for these. You saw Turpin run a whip route, yesterday. So they're definitely trying to, see what routes these guys run well, and then trying to get them more opportunities to kind of have them run those routes inside of a larger concept.
I'm trying to get the ball into their hands in space where they can make plays after the catch to make the job easier for Dak, right? Like get yourself in rhythm, get some yards, and then let's keep going. And we've talked about this all offseason. Getting Dak in rhythm is really the number one goal of Mike McCarthy and the coaching staff this offseason. If they can do that, they're going to be just fine. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. On tomorrow's show, we're going to answer your Twitter questions in the morning before practice, so make sure that you send them in. Later on in the evening at 7 p.m. Pacific time, 10 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to do a live show recapping practice, so make sure you tune in for that. It's going to be on YouTube. Be on the lookout. We'll both tweet out the link, so you won't miss it. Make sure that you're subscribing to our show on YouTube, Locked On Cowboys. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. And we'll see you next time.